Hi people and hello my chilling cards crew, it's Chilly here, the man who just designed from my eyes doing a 5-minute review on Druidess' newest album, All You Are. When Druidess dropped their debut album, they made waves in the music scene, harkening back to, of course, that 90s era of music for their reimagined style of grunge meets goth metal, spurred on by that viral clip of the band performing an impromptu gig in a skate park for anyone who was in the area at the time for free. In fact, it was that clip that piqued my interest with this group and of course got me to check out their album, which ended up landing on my top 10 list of the year. So when I found out that they had put out a new release, this SOPHOMORE album, I was more than excited to hear what they had made. So let's talk about the good and the bad off this record, starting of course with the good. Now, I'd say that production is probably the best standout on here, as the album sounds amazing and really captured the tone of the band and their depth of noise, which can be heard on songs like Forever Never or Make Me Feel. This might be a moot point to some, considering that production quality about most of the records is generally quite high, but this one just seems to exceed what I have heard lately. And of course, if you have heard the band, then you would appreciate that they have factored it on here. The other bonus, of course, is there are certainly some songs on here worthy of adding to a live set list, and really, that's about as far as I'm going to go for the good parts. Now, let's talk about the cons for this record. First, I want to point out is the track Clusterfuck, which is the perfect description for this tune. This tune just lacks any real rhyme or reason and constantly shifts styles ranging from post-grunge rock to hardcore to blast beats during its runtime that makes it very confusing, and this issue is compounded by its 3-minute duration. This is made worse by the fact that this is the very first track of the record, and I believe this was an extremely poor decision to put it up front. The following issue I have is how many of the songs feel quite uninspired, creating a mind-numbing playthrough, and I'm not just talking about the odd track here or there. Sometimes it's multiple songs in a row. The other problem I have is the album's duration, which clocks in at nearly an hour in length, and considering how I just mentioned the previous point about several songs sounding similar, it makes this a very tedious playthrough when you're going through this album, and it feels longer than it should, and that's not a good thing. Unfortunately, the cons outweigh the pros on here, which is quite a shame, because I believe this band has what it takes to really knock any album they have out of the park, but they don't quite deliver on this effort. One of the biggest contributors to the Druidess appeal was how dangerous the band sounded, mixing calm melodies with downright heavy hitting riffs, sometimes in fast-paced songs that you didn't think they were going to do, or at least the path that they were going to take. That is the biggest advantage of a debut album, because you spend your youth and time honing these pieces and crafting them to perfection, with the advantage of having time on your side. This album, on the other hand, shows a band who has slightly evolved from their debut record, but in a direction I would describe as tenuous, perhaps brought on by the rush to capitalize on their newfound fame, especially considering that this album only came out 14 months after their debut record. It's not a disingenuous effort by them, but rather a very lackluster one. It just lacks melody, instead replaced with heavy riffs in repetition. It lacks vibrancy, and doesn't really challenge the listener. Still, there are moments on here where the band does shine through, but even when this happens, it feels somewhat dull compared to what I was expecting. And I think this is where they were hampered by my unrealistic high bar I set for them because of what preceded this record. Is the band in a sophomore slump or a second album syndrome situation? I don't think it's unreasonable to assume so, and I don't think I'm alone in stating that this album falls short on multiple fronts. Overall, I'm going to give this album a score of 4.5 million chilies on the spicy scale, with my favourite tracks being Forever Never, Won't You Blind Me Today, and Make Me Feel. On my previous Druidess review, I have mentioned several bands that they sound akin to, but the most glaringly obvious one that I failed to mention was Helmet, because these guys and their thunderously loud clunking riffs are very much in vein to, of course, Page Hamilton, and this helps explain why I found myself enjoying this record after a few more playthroughs. But still, it's not Helmet, and maybe that's a distinction that I failed to realise. It wasn't obvious at first because of the band's own styles on here, but at its roots, you can eventually hear it. Now, despite the lower than what I was expecting score for this record, I am excited from this band because I believe they have what it takes to really write amazing music moving forward, and I'm certainly not going to call this a bad album by any stretch. Far from it. It just didn't reach the extremely high bar its predecessor had, and I guess I'm just showing my bias as far as this review goes. There are certainly some solid tracks in the mix, and of course, well, you know the drill. If you've heard the album, tell me what you think of it in your opinion in the comment section, and as always, stay spicy out there. If you've enjoyed this content, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to us, and stay notified for future music related content, because it keeps our manager happy at the end of the day. We are also on Discord, Instagram, Facebook, and all those other social platforms if you want to check us out. As always, people, you have a great day and stay spicy.